who was obsessed with the number 3 and put it all throughout his music as well. Well, today I want to tell you about a Czech composer by the name of Gustav Mahler. Gustav was born in 1860 in a small town in what is now the Czech Republic. His father was an innkeeper and a distiller and also not a very nice man. He was domineering and very violent often. His mother was a very kind and loving woman, but very ill. And he was one of 14 kids. However, 8 of them died either in childbirth or early on as children. So he ended up being the oldest of 6. When he was only 4 years old, he discovered a piano in his grandparents' house and he started teaching himself and playing, and he was very musical, but he's not like a show-offy, a child prodigy. That was not going to happen with his dad, who wasn't very nice, but he loved the piano. His world had little control. His dad would just fly into anger any time, and his siblings were dying. His mother was sickly. He felt he had no control of his life, and so the piano was something that he could control, and it brought him immense peace. When he was only 15 years old, he went to Vienna Conservatory. He studied piano, he studied composition, and also conducting, which helped him out a lot. He was different than a lot of the other teenagers. He was very serious. He was very intense. He believed that music was not like just decoration or just there to be pretty, but it was a necessity. Remember, the piano kind of saved his life in a way. And that what you're going to hear in his music, there's always a purpose. There's a reason for it. He wasn't about like experimenting with different styles. He was really obsessed with the meaning of it all. After graduation, he didn't make it big as a composer right away. He was known as an amazing conductor. He was very brilliant, but very unforgiving. The rehearsals were very long when you were rehearsing with him, and he was not going to stop until every note was perfect and exactly how he wanted it played. He ended up getting an amazing opportunity, which is the Vienna Opera House, which is like the creme de la creme, right? But it was actually not like this great victory. It felt more like a combat. He was a Jewish boy, and they did not appreciate the differences. That's not something that they were celebrating. And so he converted to Catholicism, not out of belief and not because that's what he wanted to do, but he felt it was a necessity for him in order to continue to be able to conduct and be in the music world. Now, the whole time that he is conducting, he never stops composing. That is what's feeding his soul. It wasn't for comfort. It wasn't for approval. It was truly a necessity for him. And his music is dark. And let me tell you a little bit about that. His symphonies were vast because he understood that life was vast. They were contradictory because he thought memory was contradictory. An example, a lullaby would dissolve into a funeral march. A birdsong would turn into terror. In his music, just like in his life, beauty and sorrow or beauty and horror, it had the same breath, and we can hear them both. So audiences were overwhelmed and critics were very confused, not really understanding like where this music is going, and it was so intense and they could feel it so much. But he didn't stop and he didn't change his way. Then he met this brilliant, magnetic, complicated girl composer named Alma, and he madly fell in love with her and they got married. Now, he kind of made a mistake because he believed that you could only have one composer and one creative person in a household. So he told her she had to stop composing, and she did, which is pretty sad. And she always resented him, and there's always this undertone of that. Now, they mostly were happy. Other than that, which is a big deal, they had 2 daughters, and at one point, one of them died of scarlet fever, and that was horrible. He did not take that well, and where we always already kind of have a dark overtone, at that point, death is not like just suggested. The idea of death and darkness is like a shadow over everything he does and composes from then on. He is diagnosed with heart disease, and so this kind of gets like it. There's no more illusion of having time, and you can hear that, and he kind of gets frantic at this point, composing like there's no tomorrow because he doesn't know there might not be a tomorrow. Composing became urgent. Every note had a lot of weight. In the meantime, Vienna became very hostile towards Jewish people. Yes, he'd converted to Catholicism, but he was still Jewish. Because of politics, anti-Semitism, rivalries, he left. He and his wife and daughter, they moved to America. He was greeted, he was welcomed, but there was no rest for him. He had a bunch of quirks and strange things. One of them was his obsession with the number 3, and we hear that throughout his works. Also his Third Symphony, it was his favorite and the thing he worked on harder than any of the other ones. But also in other ways. He had a lot of 3-part structures or thematic, like 3 themes going on in one. Like, for example, flora, fauna, humanity. Those 3 together, now he has 3 ideas in one piece. He did that constantly throughout his work, always 3, loved 3. Once in America, he did great as a conductor. He was well known and established as a conductor, so people already knew about him. He conducted the Metropolitan Opera, and then he ended up conducting the New York Philharmonic. He was doing great, he was working hard, he was exhausted. But also admired and respected, but what he really wanted was his pieces performed. But he didn't stop, he kept composing. In his life, he completed about 50 different compositions, but he did 9 symphonies, and his last symphony, the 9th symphony, was really his farewell. He knew his health was bad, he knew he was dying, and it's very interesting. It is a final letting go, and this music at the end, it does not really stop, it just fades out. It dissolves. You can see what he's thinking. When he was only 50 years old in 1911, he passed away, and he was remembered at the time as this phenomenal, brilliant conductor, but not as a composer, because his music for people at the time was too weird, too strange. It was very visual, but not in a happy way. Of course, his life hadn't been a happy one. He said, look, the symphony should contain the whole world. It shouldn't just be giving one message, because that's not how life is. It has good and bad. It has all the in-betweens. And that was his thing. A symphony contains the world. For him it did, because in every symphony, Mahler poured all of it, all he had into it. All his grief, but also all his joy. All his love, all his fear, all his hope, everything he had went into every symphony. He gained massive popularity long after his death, after Leonard Bernstein really fell in love with his music and championed and conducted his symphonies. His music is a lot. It can feel very heavy at times, but also full of love and joy. Go and listen to some Gustav Mahler.